Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. We caught up with Steve Swatton. He's the CEO at K2 Gold, the Canadian junior hunting for gold in California, and also now copper, by the way. He's at pains to tell us that the permitting process is well underway and they expect that to come through. It's a case of when, not if. And also he talks to us about the copper potential based off the back of a old BHP report. Could be a game changer, he says. If you want our thoughts and opinions on the conversation, you can find that at cruxinvestor.com. And we'd love your feedback too. So give us a like, leave your thoughts below. We'll get back to everyone. And if you want to see precisely what we talked about with Steve, take a look in the description below. Steve, how are you, sir?
I'm good, thank you. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, well, I haven't interviewed you since December, but we had a sort of half an attempt more recently than that. But I think you were in isolation in a hotel somewhere with poor internet. Where are you now?
I'm still in the Philippines, on my way back to Canada in a couple of weeks' time. But fortunately, we have a little bit better connection where I am. But I'm here in one of the porphyry copper central countries of the world. So it's a nice place to be when you're in COVID times.
Yeah, we talk about Philippines a lot on one of our shows. There's a weekly nickel show that we do, so we understand a little bit about what's going on. But you mentioned copper there. Is it a big copper producer?
Oh yeah, it is. Didipio, which is one of the mines in the north that Oceana Gold has, is one of the largest copper mines in the world, and Baguio is one of the largest gold districts in the world, and that's sort of outside of north of Manila, but outside of Subic and other areas in central north. It's got a whole porphyry belt of coppers going down the eastern side, right down to Mindanao, and it's almost, there's a line, and you just have to stick, within 150 kilometers either side of it, and bang, right down there you have this porphyry coppers, and some of them, like King down the south, are absolutely huge. And it has some of the largest copper mines in the world.
I see there's been a little bit of a change of heart with regards to open pit mining in country. I mean, what can you tell us about what's going on, what the process is?
Yeah, today there was an announcement made that open pit mining is now going to be permitted. And if that is the case, and it's true, I mean, for the last 6 to 7 years, there has been a lot of environmental investigations as to there was a lot of destruction caused by quite a few companies here. I have to say, not mainly foreign companies, mainly local ones. So they did a whole environmental process review, and now they've decided that it is significant contributor to the GDP, and they do want to encourage mining, and mining's back on again, and they're allowing open pit. Now, this was something that they weren't allowing for the last 6 to 7 years, and if you've got large porphyry coppers, it's very difficult to do them without an open pit. So I have a feeling there's going to be a little bit more interest in this part of the world. In fact, I've had about 10 to 15 emails today asking me what I think about this. Yeah.
And do you think you're going to see a lot of Western companies coming in there, or of the kind of Chinese front of the queue?
Yeah, I think the Chinese will be some of the first ones in there, but I see some of the juniors, particularly from Canada and Australia. They never really left. They kind of just left the lights on and say, bye-bye, I'll see you later. They have a lot of the permits up in Luzon Island and down in Mindanao. So I have a feeling, it's going to get interesting again down here. Like, the vicinity to China is incredible. The infrastructure here, you're never more than 100 kilometers from the ocean anywhere. The infrastructure is good because everything is close to a port. And the nice thing about the porphyry coppers here, Matt, is they also have gold, and lots of it. So, I always say that the world is local. And, if you say, hey, is Canada a good place to be? So, well, where in Canada? It's the same in the Philippines. You say, is Philippines good? Well, it depends on quite where you are. And not only that, it depends on which location within a smaller province. Like I'm in the Visayas right now, and I know that this area has had a lot of mining in the past, and it's probably one of the better areas. But there's a lot of places that are probably off limits for political reasons, and there's other areas which are much more open to exploration potential. And if the governor is a good governor, for example, during this COVID situation, we have the governor of Cebu, who's absolutely second largest city in the Philippines, completely opened it, and you got Manila, which was almost being closed down. So it's a little bit more regional oriented. It's the same with the mining and the interpretation of the mining law.
That's interesting. I didn't realize the copper gold component was so big. I guess from your BHP days, right?
Yeah.
The lay of the land. You never tempted to do business there yourself, were you?
No. What I have done in the past is I've been out here on recce expeditions for BHP, and then I've done a couple of smaller projects for myself, placer mining, and looked at some smaller operations in northern Luzon. But I think there's a huge amount of potential. I just didn't really have the capital to go full hog, and I didn't really have the confidence in the local politics to follow it through. But I think things are changing here. I've been here over 10 years now, and I really do believe there's a bit of a change. People want change. Duterte was the only person who was ever voted in without people having been sold the votes. So how the system works here is you're paid money to vote for a particular candidate, and he didn't do it. So things are beginning to change. I know Duterte is not exactly everybody's favorite leader from some circles, but here he's very popular.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting, because the optics from outside is that he's slightly unhinged and unconventional. That's a better word. He's slightly unconventional, but internally, people like him.
Yeah, he's got 80% internal rating, and look, it's one of those situations where it'd be difficult for me to comment. I mean, I've seen a lot of positive changes under Duterte, but I understand that some of the tactics he uses with getting things done are not conventional, and all I can say is that the average person on the street, their lives got better.
Okay, good. Hey, well, I didn't mean to get sidetracked with that. We're here to talk about KT, right? over in California, but I think it's fascinating. It's fascinating your experience there, and it's nice to sort of get a global view of these things. We should talk about your project. So why don't you, for people new to this KT story, just give them a reminder over the 1 minute summary of what it is that you've got, and we'll start a conversation from there.
Yeah, this project was kind of discovered in the 80s and 90s by Newmont and BHP, and BHP's coming up again. And that's part of my, I knew about this project when I used to work for them, but it was kind of on its way out when I came in. It's an epithermal gold, sediment hosted, not dissimilar from the Beatty district, which Core Mining and a bunch of others are, Core Mining and a bunch of others are exploring up there. It's in a very well-endowed mineral area, but it's in California, so it hasn't had quite the amount of love that maybe Nevada had. And I think part of the reason, Matt, that we've suffered somewhat, our share price has gone down. We talked about that off camera just now. Part of it is that there's a little bit of nervousness around California and can mining get done. It's kind of interesting. We've got we're part of a process, and we are now 3/4 of the way through that process. Yes, do we have opposition? Like everywhere, like any mining project, there's opposition. It's pretty, I would say, well organized in this part of the world. But BLM is a government body, and we just tick the boxes and we go through the process. It's just one of those things where we do get a lot of questions and backwards and forwards. And of course, when Biden, and you had Carolyn on last time talking about Biden and all this. When Biden came in, yeah, there was a slight pause, but nothing has changed. Under Biden, nothing's really changed. In fact, I would argue that in certain aspects, his green revolution, if you like, the necessity now to have all of these solar products and copper products on the market has made the whole country really think, well, on the one hand, we don't want mining, but on the other hand, we kind of want to go green. So how are we going to sort this out? So, we have a situation where gold, yes, it's not one of the metals that you're looking for in terms to build solar panels or anything like that, but it's a conductive material that is in almost every circuit board. It's used in a lot of medical applications and everything else. So there is apart from the currency, there is an inherent value in gold from other aspects. But not only that, I mean, this district that we're looking at, which is roughly about 7 kilometers by 7 kilometers, we focused on the gold, which is on the eastern area, because we had the most information about it. But we already knew that there was copper and there was lead zinc. And to the western side, of the property, there is a 1997 BHP report which refers to the possibility of a buried porphyry copper. Now, we haven't spent any time looking at that up until now because we've been focused on the gold on the eastern side. And, you know, the more we look, the more we find there. And I think part of the problem why we went off price a little bit was we demonstrated an amazing intersection. Our first hole was 87 meters of 4 grams gold. Well, then everything since then looked like it was a little bit worse. But you got to remember, that's an exceptional number. And you can't keep repeating numbers like that all the time. So what we've done is we've extended the size of the gold zone. And I think with the next round of drilling that we are hoping to do towards the end of this year, we will actually be able to put a resource together for the gold. But in the interim here, and you were quite right, we've been somewhat stalled, but I would say it's just the process. We're going through the process like everyone else. We've been doing a huge amount of exploration. And what we've done is we've also moved further to the west. We've gone to this copper zone, and good Lord, we found like 2 kilometers of mineralized, 2 kilometers long by 250 meters wide, with samples up to 14%. I mean, we don't quite know what it means. It's sediment hosted, and I'm not trying to play it up. All I'm saying is that of 56 samples that we had more than 1% copper in them. Well, we're not even sure how it all hangs together. But what it looks like, Matt, if you look at the whole system from the western side to the eastern side, you have a porphyry copper possibly on the western side, which is the volcanic, it's the intrusive related and igneous related sort of western side. And then we have a bunch of faults that come through that, you know, they're all parallel to the San Andreas, the famous San Andreas fault. And what we think we have is if we have a porphyry copper with the gold at the top, and it's been rotated on its side and then sort of cut in half and in several slices by a bunch of northwest southeast faults. And all we're seeing is a typical porphyry type situation on its side. And we've been exploring for the gold on the eastern side, but there may well be copper on the western side as well. So look, it's early days, but we haven't been sitting idle whilst waiting for this permit to get granted. And it will get granted. It's just a matter of time.
Okay, thanks for that. You've downloaded, I think, the whole story there in one piece. So that's good. But I got to bring you back to the beginning and the end of that conversation, which is around the permit. There's concern. Most of the questions sent in around the permitting. You know, there's mentions of national parks and so forth, and people are concerned that this thing is not going to get over the line. So when you say it's just a process, surely there's a decision that needs to be made. It's going to be yes or it's going to be no. Why are you saying it's just a process?
It's always going to be yes, unless the US law changes. There's an 1872 Mining Act that it's a process, unlike Canada, where a decision by particular groups can impact the outcome. In this situation, nobody can affect the outcome, but they can delay it, but not change it.
What's that mean? What do you mean they can't? They can delay it, but they can't change it. So you're saying if you meet all of the conditions, you're guaranteed it for sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. The lawyer that we're using, he's based out of Sacramento. He spent his whole life putting mining deals together. He's a mining lawyer, one of the few that there are still in California. We have no endemic species on the property. He said it's the first property he's ever worked on where this hasn't happened. I mean, even at Castle Mountain to the south of us, they had the desert tortoise. But the law is, if there is an issue that's brought up that needs to be addressed, providing you mitigate that risk, they can't stop you from actually going ahead with it. You have the right to mine. You have the right to explore and the right to mine. And there's got to be an absolute reason that has never been anticipated before for it to halt. In this case, I have to tell you, Matt, on 2 occasions, it was not put into the Desert Protection Act simply because it's got mineral potential. It was left out because it's got mineral potential that can actually deliver, income and job diversity to the local towns. The local towns there are somewhat depleted in their resources as a result of this is the Owens Valley, where the water for LA was drawn from these areas. And it used to be a flourishing agricultural area. and it used to be a big mining area. We counted recently 192 different mines were in Inyo County. Inyo County is the second largest in size, but the second least population in California. Now, this area was also, during the Second World War, they had a tungsten mine near Bishop, which is 54 miles away, which actually was the backbone of the American, if you like, offensive during the Second World War. It's been an extremely important mining area, and a lot of the old timers, people my age, still remember the mines being open. It's not that long ago. It's just the people who, if you like, are most on the offensive and against the mining are the people who tend to retire from the bigger cities. And it's a few of the people who are living there for a lifestyle. But I tell you, in Lone Pine, which is extremely open-minded, local community of 1,800 people, we have a lot of support, a lot more support than we've been given credit for. And yes, it's a process, and we're winning over quite a lot of the businesses and the local people in terms of supporting what we're trying to do. We've got an open book, Matt. We're transparent. We have an office in the small town of Lone Pine. We have numerous open days, and so far we haven't. As far as I can see, we haven't missed a step so far.
Okay, so the lawyer that you're using, the Californian mining lawyer, has he ever seen a permit refused?
He saw one permit, he told me, that was refused because the reason why you have to have a certain amount, it was an aggregate mine, and you have to have a certain amount of aggregate, and the permit he was working on was a little too close to the town in which it was one. But other than that, that's the only one in his whole career that he's ever seen. Everything else eventually gets permitted.
Okay, and you're saying, okay, if we go through the right process and we mitigate the risks or concerns, which I don't know what they could be. Okay, desert tortoises aside, there's no water table anymore.
Yeah.
There's nothing there that has been brought to your attention as part of the process you're going through in terms of the environmental that you're aware of, or the things that you're working on?
There are certain things that, Matt, there's certain things that people are bringing up as something that is of concern, but that's different from endemic species, which has to be protected. There's several species of plant that people are bringing to our attention, but we already know about it. We have a biological consulting group which work on our behalf. There's nothing particularly special in terms of the species that are in that area that will impede us from proceeding.
Got it. Okay, so people should not be concerned. It's just a delay as far as you're concerned, but you will get there. That's
the next drilling program that we're doing, Matt, is on an old reclaimed road that BHP are already in. We're not even building a road. All we're doing is opening a road that's already there. I can't see that this next round of drilling, which is 10,000 meters, it's a significant size program for us, but it's not going to cause undue degradation.
Okay, leave it. I wanted to kind of go in there because that is what people are talking about. That's what they're thinking about. And maybe because you've got some, locals who perhaps, don't want you there and they're going to be louder than most, but, just wanted you to deal with it. Okay. Should we talk about some of these gold results? Because I haven't seen you since December. I did speak with Carolyn in April, but we kind of focused on the ESG component there. 30 meters at 7.2, 41 meters at 1.6. You've got gold there, and it's a question of, how much more drilling will you be doing? 10,000 meters by the sounds of it. You're just going to focus on the gold with the drilling, are you? Because you've made this copper discovery announcement.
Yeah, the thing is we have to apply for a different permit if we're going to go and drill that area. So then we're going to start the process again. So I kind of like to complete what we're doing right now. And Jody, who's the VP Exploration, has done a great job in actually finding new zones. So it's easier to be accretive to what we already have. Like the west and the eastern side, I tell you, it's chalk and cheese. I mean, one side is quite easy access from an old forest road that's in there. The western side is a little more tricky. It is possible, but it will require, coming at the same, if you like, potential ore body from two different angles, and it's logistically it would be a challenge to be working on both at the same time. That's all.
Right. So nothing to do with budget constraints or anything. It's just, it's what makes sense. You stay focused on that. So, right. So when does the drilling begin? Can you drill?
Well, the drilling can begin once we receive the result of the EA process. That's the environmental assessment process that we're going through. And we're expecting it. I'm meeting online with the director of the BLM on Friday, and it's imminent. I mean, as I say, we're going through the process. It will be given to us. It will be granted. Whether it's going to be in 2 weeks' time or a month, I can't tell you, but it's soon.
Okay. And the burn rate while you're sitting around waiting for that is what?
No, it's minimal. There's only a few of us that work there. We have consultants down there doing some ionic leach, and we're doing some VTEM geophysics, but look, we went out and did a bought deal for 7 million. We still have 5.2 million in the bank.
Okay, so you're not crashing your way through that. Okay, understood. Just on the copper component, because you did make reference to it earlier, is obviously copper, near or if not at all-time highs. People are excited about the EV thematic, and it's interesting because your gold story, that's where you started off, selling yourselves as. If you go through a process and you recognize that you've got a lot of copper there, if you can get to the point where you understand how much copper you've got there, do you keep that in the same company? Are you a gold copper company? Do you try and do something else with it? Do you flip your focus onto copper? Because there's a lot of gold companies out there, loads of them. Copper is much more demand.
It'll be a game changer if we have the amount of copper that maybe is being suggested is in the ground. And I can't really speculate what would happen, but the company you see right now where you were talking about a depressed share price would not be the same. You've seen the values of some of these gold copper companies right now. It's in huge demand. We've always known it's there. We've only just got around to doing some exploration now. I can't really speculate as to how it would be, but I tell you, if we have the amount of gold that we have and the amount of copper that we suspect, it'll be a mid-sized company overnight.
So this report, which you haven't yet had time to, where you're only just getting around to looking at, where basically is suggesting that there's a big copper porphyry sitting at depth. I mean, how much data have you got? How much work was done by them?
There was a minimal amount of field work, there's some limited geophysics, but a lot of it was based, so what happened was that the BHP in the late 90s decided that they were going to exit gold altogether. I mean, BHP, one of those companies, if they can't actually be one of the top three exporters, producers of a particular metal, they don't want to be in it. So I know this because I've spoken to them. If they can't see 5 million ounces, pull out of it. But they sent the guys in there to make sure that there's no porphyry copper. Now they kind of dragged their foot on the way out, because suddenly the guys came back and said, you know what? The mapping seems to suggest there is copper on the outside. The geochemistry seems to suggest there's something, and it was vectoring in to the western side, which is under talus. The difficulty with talus is conventional geochemistry like soil samples will not work. So you need to do, deep penetrating geophysics. And they didn't have the appetite to do it at the time. They said, okay, you can't see 5 million ounces. You're telling us the sniffs of copper, we're out of here. But the report that was written, then subsequently, I spoke to the person he worked for me when I worked for BHP. He's let me put it like this. He's quite confident there is copper there. Of course, he can't say how much, but he's quite confident there is a porphyry copper sitting underneath this talus.
Okay.
At what depth, I can't tell you.
And you won't be able to tell us anytime soon, because you're not going to focus on that anytime soon.
Well, we won't be drilling anytime soon, but I tell you, we'll have the results from the geophysics fairly soon. It'll tell us if there's an anomaly there. If there's an anomaly there, well, we'll be applying for some new permits.
Okay, well, that's geologists love hunting down anomalies all the time, right? But going from anomaly to discovery is another matter. So, but it gives you a decision to make, and your decision would be applying for permits to actually do some drilling there. That's the outcome. Okay, exactly. Great. And my takeaway from this is that you are going to get that permit. It's going to be relatively soon. People should sit back and wait for you to deliver that. So we will sit back and wait for you to deliver that. And you are going to focus on gold in the short term.
exactly. But we will be doing quite a bit more exploration for the copper potential, just to see what there is in the ground.
Okay, Steve. Thanks for the update. Appreciate that. We will follow you closely. So we need to see this motoring. I think your shareholders want to see this motoring because it's come off. Sort of 69.70 when we spoke in December. It's down at sort of 39.40 at the moment. I think people just want to see this permitting come through and see what you do next.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, thanks, Matt.